in their mission to find the vestiges of divergence and defeat the Chroma Conclave. The adventurers known as Vox Machina have actually managed to find 2 of the vestiges, as well as defeat the Herd of Storms and the Black Dragon Umbrasyl. But their quest is far from over. So grab your D20s and roll for initiative, because it is once again time for Cartoon versus Campaign. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to Cartoon vs. Campaign, where we compare The Legend of Vox Machina to the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that inspired it. But first, the usual disclaimers. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2, or Campaign 1 of Critical Role, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. And the main difference between the cartoon and the campaign this time around is that the order of events are dramatically different, especially in this episode. When we last left off, Vox Machina defeated Umbrasyl and headed to Whitestone to touch base with their allies. As I stated before, Vox Machina's adventures in the Fey Realm take place next, and I know this will not surprise you, but so much happens between Vox Machina defeating Umbrasyl and actually heading to the Fey Realm. After defeating the dragon, looting his hoard, and harvesting his body, our heroes treat themselves to a night in the magnificent mansion. After a bit of shenanigans between the twins over the Boots of Haste, Keyleth requests for Scanlan to create a spa room, and the gnome immediately does so. Keyleth intends for the girls to have a spa day to themselves, so she invites Vex and Pike via her earring of whispering, completely forgetting that the boys can hear that too. So of course, they invite themselves, so the entire party meets in the spa completely naked. Except for Pike, who apparently cannot be seen naked due to her divinity. The initial purpose of the girls-only spa day was so the ladies can discuss what's happening between Keyleth and Vasselheim. But the whole thing de-evolves into a hilarious cannonball contest that's judged by Grog. Keyleth goes first, jumps into the air, turns into an earth elemental, and creates an enormous splash. Pike does the same by using her gauntlets of ogre power. Scanlan uses Thunder Wave, then Vex dives from her broom and releases Trinket from her necklace just before hitting the water. And finally, Percy dives in with a cauldron full of sodium, creating a massive explosion that wins him the contest but injures himself in the process. This sequence is hilarious, and it is a damn shame that it didn't make it into the cartoon. The next morning during breakfast, Grog reveals that a magical jug that he looted from the hoard can instantly be filled with whatever liquid or dressing you request, and he spent most of the night testing it, requesting beer and mayonnaise. When asked what he did with the mayo, Grog responds, "I ate that too." This is followed by a badass moment that is also a damn shame didn't make it into the cartoon. As our heroes are about to leave the cave, Percy requests Keyleth write something for him on the wall using stone shape. She creates the Vox Machina seal, and then under it, in Draconic, she writes, "One down." Like I said, badass. They leave the cave and head back to the field where they first engaged Umbrasyl. There, they find what's left of the Herd of Storms and Fassbender lighting funeral pyres for the fallen. Grog has a short conversation with Zanror, informing him that the dragon is slain, and encourages him to help himself to some of the treasure in the hoard, but to leave some for the people of Westrun. At this point, our heroes are approached by a new guest character, Carrick, a retired paladin who's looking over Westrun in their absence, played by Patrick Rothfuss, renowned fantasy author and member of Acquisitions Incorporated. That night, they have a party to celebrate the liberation of Westrun, and Vox Machina decides to stay a few more days just to help the town get back on its feet. They put the treasure from the hoard in a trust, they bury Reginald, the farmer who helped them, and give his daughter Emily 500 gold. They help rebuild the town. Keyleth teleports all the citizens who want to leave to Kaimal, and she uses stone shape to create some underground bunkers where the citizens can stay and hide if there is another dragon attack. Percy takes it upon himself to record the amazing events that transpired in the past few days by writing the story down on a wall that's in the city. A little local boy helps him by adding a portrait of the heroes who saved them. I'm not crying, you're crying. Goddamn allergies. Before they leave, Scanlan gives his sword to Kaylee with some of his scrying poo stuffed into a secret compartment in the hilt. Yeah, don't ask. He then tells her that if they survive the conclave, that he will return and be a real father to her. She simply responds, "Don't die." While they intend to go to Whitestone next and touch base with their allies, Vasselheim wants to go to Vasselheim for some private business, and only intends to take Pike with him, but the others insist on coming along. So they leave Carrick in charge of Westrun, they give him Fastbender, that very useful golem, and our heroes return to Vasselheim. This is when Vax goes to the Temple of the Raven Queen, enters the Pool of Blood, and has that very pivotal conversation about fate. We are yet again treated to another hilarious scene between Percy and Victor, while Grog and Scanlan go hat shopping. Percy also visits the Temple of the Raven Queen and has a chat with her, but before he leaves, he takes a vial of blood. And then, and only then, do they go back to Whitestone. They have a semi-formal dinner with their allies and exchange progress reports. This is where they first learn of the efforts being made to create a cloaking spell around Whitestone to protect it from the Conclave. After dinner, Percy approaches Zara and gives her some gold and the vial of blood from the Temple of the Raven Queen, and instructs her to convert the Anders family crypt into a Temple of the Raven Queen. So, in the future, Vex and Vax can move to Whitestone if they want to. When Vexalia finds out about his intent, she grabs Percy and kisses him on the cheek. Meanwhile, Grog and Vax's prank war continues, as the Goliath fills his refillable jug with oil and then pours it all over the floor in front of Vax's room. With his high perception, Vax spots the oil right away. Then he dips his fingers into it, goes to Grog's room, and on his door he writes, "Grog smells like farts and poo." And then Vexalia reminds him, Grog can't read. So, Vax remedies this by pulling down his pants, dipping his butt into the oil, and pressing ham against Grog's door. Our heroes, everyone. That night, Gilmore visits Vax in his room and asks if he wants to join him on a walk. Vax is about to put on the Deathwalker's ward, but Gilmore offers him a robe. The two of them walk onto one of the castle's balconies and have a very intimate conversation about their relationship, when suddenly, Gilmore takes out a poisoned dagger and stabs Vax, revealing himself to be Hodus the Rakshasa in disguise. Who the hell is Hodus the Rakshasa? This guy!
I will return, and I will find you! Heard that before.
See? I told you he'd be important! Anyway, then Vax says into his earring of whispering, "Assassins, Western Tower, and Courtyard, Jenga," and engages Hodus in combat without any of his weapons or his armor. Other assassins attack the rest of the party in their bedrooms, but thanks to Vax's warning, they all wake up in time to fend off their attackers. Keyleth even pushes her assassin out of her bedroom window. Scanlan, however, stayed up reading, and was not asleep when Vax sent the message, so he got to hear it in full, and dimension doors to Vax's location, just in time to see Vax and Hodus fall off the balcony together and onto the courtyard below. Vasselheim sustains too much damage and falls unconscious, so Scanlan heroically jumps off the balcony with Mythcarver in hand, coming down on Hodus' blade first, and dealing some significant damage. He then casts Healing Word on Vax, effectively saving his friend. At this point, the rest of Vox Machina arrive and attack Hodus, with such ferocity that the Rakshasa has no choice but to run away. He doesn't get far, as Pike casts Flame Strike and completely obliterates him. Apparently, the rest of Vox Machina's allies were also attacked by assassins, but they also dispatched their attackers with ease. Even the dude that Keyleth threw out the window gets caught and killed by Galdric the Black Wolf. At this point, the robe that Hodus gave to Vax starts to get tighter and tighter until he can barely breathe. The party decides to take him to the spinning ball of doom in hopes that his magic nullifying effects will deactivate the robe. And sure enough, the enchantment on the robe stops and it just falls right off of Vax, leaving him standing there naked. At this point, the real Gilmore walks in to check on him and sees him there. And he seems to be okay with it. Later, after getting dressed, Vax joins Gilmore and the others behind the castle. Vax asks Gilmore if he can glean anything about the Deathwalker's ward. The flamboyant wizard studies the armor for a moment and then asks Vasselheim, "Do you trust me?" Vax says, "I do." And then Gilmore proceeds to push Vax off the cliff behind the castle. And this is when Vax gives in to faith and his armor sprouts wings. The first thing he does upon gaining his amazing flying ability is to fly up to Gilmore, pick him up, hug him, and thank him. The next day, Vax wakes up feeling sick from Hodus' poisoned dagger, but Pike casts Greater Restoration and he's good to go. Percy modifies Vexalia's broom by adding a seat and stabilizers so she can remain steady while riding it, and names it Death from Above. Scanlan officially reveals his condition for giving Vexalia the magic word that makes her broom fly, and that condition is that every time she flies on her broom, she has to wear a witch's hat that he bought for her in Vasselheim. Laura Bailey loves this condition, and not only does she have Vex wear the hat while riding the broom, she has her wear the hat almost all the time. God, I hope this makes it into the cartoon. Pike then announces that she's going to stay in Whitestone and help create the cloaking spell to avoid any more assassins, and to take care of some other things while she's there. Scanlan takes the opportunity to approach Pike and retract his marriage proposal, admitting that his attraction to her was mostly superficial and that he barely knows her, and that he would like to get to know her better and become better friends. And then he advises her that if she loves somebody, to not wait and just go for it. The group then shares some good times at a tavern before calling it a night. In the morning, they say their goodbyes, give Pike a gate stone so she can rejoin the party as soon as she's ready, and then officially does Keyleth cast Plane Shift, and then and only then do they go to the Feywild, also known as the Fey Realm. When we last left off in the cartoon, Percy and the elves arrive in the Fey Realm, minus Grog and the gnomes. In the campaign, the party arrives only missing Pike, but almost immediately she joins them via the Gatestone. I guess that cloaking spell was a lot easier to cast than initially thought. In the cartoon, our heroes meet some very specific dangers in their search for the Fenris bow, like an awoken grove which reacts to their emotions, and Vex dispatches with an exploding arrow, and an amalgamation that drugs the girls with spores to very hilarious results. And the boys finish it off by driving it towards water, and Percy shocking it with diplomacy. The boys then make up and put their beef from Pervan's tomb behind them. None of that happens in the campaign, where the obstacles that they meet are completely different. The first of which is a nymph who blinds Percy, but upon realizing her mistake, apologizes and gives them some valuable information. Namely that the Fenris bow is located inside of the cursed echo tree in the Shademurk. In the cartoon, they get this information from Mythcarver and Garmeli. Vexalia then thanks the nymph by giving her the very expensive book that she bought in Vasselheim. Pike then goes to cure Percy of his blindness using Greater Restoration. Scanlan encourages her to do so by telling her to get rid of this blind spot so they can finally be together. Nice! On their way to the Shademurk, Keyleth teaches her Speak to Animal spell to Vex, who then uses it to speak to Trinket for the first time ever. In the cartoon, this is referenced when her and Keyleth are high on spores.
It's not what I imagined you'd sound like.
I know, right?
In the campaign, however, they have a legitimate conversation, and Vex checks if Trinket is okay with going in and out of the magic necklace. And very much like the last time that Keyleth asked him, he says, yes, if that's what you want me to do. If that is what will make you happy. He's a good bear. In both versions, our heroes have trouble traversing this strange land due to the fact that there is no sunset or sunrise. With her keen eyesight, Vexalia spots a small creature following them and scribbling something down in a book. Vex stealthily approaches him on her broom and asks,
Hey, what you doing?
before grabbing him and taking him to the others. Our heroes question him and learn that his name is Garmeli, and he's just a satyr and a mischievous wanderer who likes to observe others and draw. In the cartoon, his drawings are mostly pornographic.
Why do I have 3 peni?
In the campaign, his art ranges from perverted to silly to strictly satirical, especially when it comes to Grog, who is so displeased with Garmeli's portrayal of him that he takes his ocarina and breaks it. In the cartoon, Garmeli repeatedly offers to guide the party, but Percy continuously turns him down, claiming to be an expert on the Fey Realm, and only relenting when it becomes 100% apparent that he is not. In the campaign, it is the party who asks Garmeli to guide them, and they try to coerce him in multiple ways, the first of which is giving him a raven feather to replace the quill that he lost when Vexalia grabbed him. They also try to sweeten the deal by inviting him to stay with them in the Magnificent Mansion. During this discussion, they spot a city in the distance, and Garmeli confirms that it is Syngorn, which explains where the city disappeared to when the dragons attacked. That night, Vex and Vax argue about whether they should go through Syngorn or not. Ultimately, they determine that it would be faster to go across rather than around, and that while traveling through the city, they might be able to glean more information about the Fenris bow. They all sit down to have drinks and negotiate with Garmeli, and during this time, Keyleth starts to exhibit some very creepy behavior towards the satyr, as she is very much fascinated with him. At one point, she even pets his fur without his permission. Guys, never touch anyone without asking for permission. Remember what Henry Crabgrass always says. Consent, please. Anyway, during said negotiations, they specifically ask Garmeli to lead them to the Shademark, a request that leaves Garmeli shocked and terrified, and he emphatically turns them down. After much coercion, Garmeli finally agrees to guide Vox Machina to the Shademark, but he has a condition. Vox Machina must first acquire 3 items for him, and he will not tell them what those 3 items are until after they agree, which they do. And it's only until after they agree that they realize that Garmeli used a little bit of magic on them to sway them into agreeing, but by then it's too late. He warns them that there are 3 things to avoid on their way to the Shademark. Number 1, the hut of Wudina, a nasty woman. 2, the last campsite of Sorandon the Happy. And number 3, the theater. Garmeli hates the theater.
I usually hate the theatre, but that had it all.
They continue to drink until Garmeli passes out, and everyone retires to their rooms, except for Scanlan, who stays up reading. This is when Vexalia and Percy have their conversation about the perception of class and status.
It's easy to act noble. Just be a bit of a shit and wear what everyone else is wearing.
Early the next morning, Pike asks Garmeli to draw a family portrait of Vox Machina, which she then hangs over the mantle of the mansion. Our heroes view the picture as they are about to head out for the day and express some mixed reviews, as it features Keyleth loving trees a little too much, Pike looking like her family lineage was kept in the family, Vex and Vax viciously making out with one another, Grog with one thumb up and the other up his butt, Percy about to blow his brains out, and Scanlan is perfect, just as dashing and handsome as he always is. They then leave the mansion and head towards Syngorn, but before they even get close to the city, one of the guards on the wall fires an arrow at them, which lands a mere inches away from their feet. Vexalia then takes off her hood and announces that they are Sildor's children and are there to see their father. In the cartoon, our heroes don't even know Syngorn was in their path until they accidentally come upon it. Echo Tree. In the cartoon, they try to sneak through the city, and it is during this time that Garmeli tells them the reason they are going across the city rather than around. Because if they did, they would have to go through Pixie territory, and they don't want to do that.
And you do not want to tangle with pixies? No.
In the campaign, they do end up going through Pixie territory, and boy was Garmeli right, and I will tell you all about that in just a few minutes. Eventually, they get caught, and this is when Vexalia begrudgingly evokes her father's name to save themselves. In the campaign, our heroes are escorted through the city by the guards, and as they walk along, Keyleth and Scanlan try to greet the citizens by saying good day. And this is when Grog misunderstands them and erroneously starts using the word bidet as a greeting.
I think you mean bidet.
Oh, gods.
In both versions, they are taken to Sildor's home, where they are greeted by their stepmother, Devana, and meet their stepsister, Valora, who Vex gives a feather to as a gift. They then have a very tense meeting with Sildor, in which they fail to convince him of their mission and accomplishments, but he grants them passage through Syngorn nonetheless, but mostly because he is embarrassed by them and wants to get rid of them as quickly as possible. In the campaign, Sildor might be blunt and condescending, but he's nowhere close to being as much of an asshole as he is in the cartoon, where he has no faith, kindness, or pity for his children and their friends. Furthermore, Vax hates him so much that he can barely bring himself to talk to him, while Vexalia is more submissive and tolerant of her father's impertinence. It is during this scene that Vexalia delivers her amazing line that if she could rip Sildor's blood from her veins and give it back, she would. In the cartoon, she says this much later during her confrontation with Saundor.
If I could pull the blood of him from my veins and give it back, I would.
The cartoon does skip one of my favorite lines from the campaign, which is when Saundor accuses Vox Machina of wasting their time chasing fleeting rumors. And Vax says, "I'm wearing a fleeting rumor." Still, in the cartoon, I respect him being more stoic during this scene and using his words sparingly. In both versions, he presents them with papers granting them passage through Syngorn. In the campaign, the papers also grant them an audience with the High Warden. In both versions, however, Percy asks Saundor to amend the decree and add Vexalia's full title, which he 100% made up at that very moment, which is Lady Vexalia, Baroness of the Third House of Whitestone, and Grand Mistress of the Grey Hunt. In the campaign, Saundor, believe it or not, apologizes and has the decree amended. In the cartoon, he sees through Percy's bullshit and basically tells Percy to F off, which triggers Vex.
We came here seeking aid, and you insult my friends?
In both versions, they take their leave from Sildor's home, but not before teaching Valora a few new vocabulary words.
What does you mean?
At this point in the cartoon, our heroes continue their journey to the Shademurk. In the campaign, they do a few more things before officially leaving Syngorn. Our heroes, who are always escorted by guards, go to their assigned lodging. And there, Garmeli reappears, revealing to them what he wants them to procure for him. The first item was a small bronze statue of Saundor, which he already stole from the house. The second item is a small piece of Threshold Crest, which are the magical stones that they used to teleport the city to the Fey Realm. And the third item is the High Warden's tricorn hat. Upon hearing this, Vexalia requests that their meeting with the High Warden happen immediately, so the guards escort them to the High Warden's house right away. There, they learn from the High Warden that the Shademurk is ruled by an Archfey that has become one with the land. In the cartoon, they learn this from Garmeli right before entering the Echo Tree. After some shenanigans that include our heroes showing off their awesome headwear, they spot the infamous tricorn hat. Vexalia fakes a nasty fall, Keyleth threatens to sue, and while the High Warden and her guards are distracted, Vax swipes the hat. And our heroes get out of there very quickly and go back to their lodgings. When they get there, the entire party crams into one tiny little room together, which really confuses the guards. Vexalia hastily tells the guards that they just need to go in and pray, which Scanlan follows up by telling them that it's a polyamorous thing, which really disturbs them. Keyleth doesn't know what polyamorous means, so she polymorphs Vax and Percy into squirrels, picks them up, and carries them in the room as she tells the guards, "See? Polyamorous," which disturbs them even more. In the room, Garmeli reappears, and they give him the hat. Then he reminds them that they still owe him a piece of Threshold Crest, to which Percy smiles and nods at Keyleth, who then stone shapes the Whitestone crest into the threshold above the door to their room. They then break off a piece and hand it to Garmeli and say, "See? A piece of Threshold Crest." Garmeli laughs, compliments them on their deviousness, and proclaims that their bargain has been fulfilled, and that they need to leave for the Shademurk as soon as possible. And they do. The guards escort them out of the city and watch them leave, much to their relief. In the cartoon, the only thing majorly significant during this portion is a beautiful heart-to-heart conversation between Percy and Vex, which concludes with him giving her a siege arrow. They meet no further obstacles between Syngorn and the Shademurk. In the campaign, they most certainly do. First, they traverse ever-shifting grass, which reacts to everything that they say. They each take turns saying things to the grass, and everything is fine until Keyleth says, "Suck it, grass," and suddenly they can't move. They are effectively stuck until Percy very eloquently compliments the grass in the most flowery language that he can muster. And then they are officially allowed to pass. Taliesin is so amazing in this scene that I am surprised that they didn't create a romantic subplot between Percy and the ever-shifting grass. Keyleth and Vex are attacked by a giant spectral dire bear, who allows them to pass when he notices the lady's strong connection to nature. The party then comes across a campsite, where magical floating instruments are forcing an elf and a lichen to dance. Both Vax and Scanlan fall under the spell and start dancing. Vexalia rescues Vax by flying by and capturing him in her necklace. Grog saves Scanlan by raging, running into the camp, grabbing the gnome, and running back out. Garmeli then chastises them for falling into that trap, as that was the very campsite of Sarandon the Happy, which he explicitly told them to avoid. They all shrug their shoulders and move on. Anyway, do you remember how I told you that Garmeli was very much concerned about pixies? Well, you're about to find out why his concern is justified. Vox Machina find themselves surrounded by Lycans, who offer them safe passage through their land if our heroes infiltrate the Pixie village and break their crystal stone circle. Vox Machina wants no part of this, especially since they just fell into one of the traps that Garmeli warned them about. So, instead of going into the Pixie village, they simply go by, and Keyleth casts hallucinatory terrain and makes it look like they destroyed the village, and they just keep going. Our heroes then run into an invisible barrier that prevents them from leaving the forest. The leader of the Lycans, Ukurat, approaches them and explains that no one is leaving the forest until the crystal circle is destroyed. So once again, Vox Machina uncharacteristically tries to handle the situation as diplomatically as possible. They call for a peaceful meeting with the Pixies so they can state their case, and they even make tea for them. But the little bastards revoke our hero's peaceful approach by turning Grog into stone. And by the way, Travis remains frozen during this entire scene. It's amazing. The Pixies then try to strike a new deal with Vox Machina. They claim that they will grant them safe passage through their land, and the only thing that they will graciously take as payment is Grog. So Percy casts Hex on them, and the fight is on. Vox Machina then proceeds to obliterate the Pixies, and Ukurat destroys the Crystal Stone Circle, which dispels the force field. Keyleth turns Grog back to normal using Greater Restoration, and Ukurat tells them that if they are ever in a jam, to call on him and he will back them up. So they officially make it to the Shademurk. Pike is astral projecting because it's Thursday. There they discover that there are 7 rivers surrounding the area to keep people out. So Vex and Vax try to fly over the rivers, but as soon as they do, they become magically disoriented and fall into the water. Thankfully, they are quickly rescued by the others. So, after a bit of trial and error that includes Scanlan hilariously throwing Garmeli over the rivers with Bigby's hand, our favorite gnome bard dimension doors himself and Pike across all the rivers, and sets up the immovable rod. Vexalia then ties the infinite rope to one of her arrows and fires it at the gnomes. Pike then takes their end of the infinite rope and ties it to the immovable rod with a sailor's knot. The rest of the party tie segments of the rope around their waist and begin pulling themselves across the rivers, with a little added help from Keyleth's control water ability. They successfully make it almost all the way across until they get to the second to the last river, where they are attacked by a giant crocodile plant monster. Now keep in mind, Pike and Scanlan are 2 rivers away, and the rest of the party are tethered together via a rope. So yeah, it's a bit of a clusterfuck. The creature swallows Grog, and the others can't get away, so Scanlan uses his wand of magic missiles to sever the rope and free the others. Vex gets stunned by the creature and falls into the river, but thankfully is saved by Vax'ildan and Garmeli. Grog uses the Titan Stone Knuckles to make himself grow, forcing the creature to spit him out. And as soon as he's clear, Keyleth casts Blight and destroys the monster once and for all. Still in his very large state, Grog grabs each member of the party and tosses them over the last 2 rivers. Then grabs Garmeli, who was trying to get away, and jumps over as well. Garmeli proclaims that he has held up his end of the bargain and wants to leave. Vexalia grabs him and hugs him, thanking him for saving her from the river. But in actuality, she was checking him to make sure that he didn't steal anything from them. Which he did, a tiny onyx statue, which she takes back. Garmeli then says goodbye, turns invisible, and his little footsteps disappear along the edge of the river. In the cartoon, he doesn't vanish until they are about to enter the Echo Tree. Back in the campaign, our heroes continue their journey over very rough terrain, which is briefly referenced in the cartoon. Vexalia lets the gnomes ride on her broom to spare them the burden. They eventually come across a hut that's been carved out of a tree. They want to make sure that that's not the Echo Tree, so they want to investigate. So Grog, aka Travis Willingham, volunteers the gnomes that are on the broom to go check it out, even though stealth is not their thing. The next few minutes of gameplay are tense as hell, as Laura Bailey, his wife, is staring daggers at him as her flying broom could potentially be lost or damaged during this haphazard scouting mission. Scanlan and Pike fly over to the hut, look through the window, and see a creepy bony hand emerge from behind an armchair. It quickly becomes apparent that this is the hut of Woodina, the horrible woman that Garmeli warned them about. So the gnomes immediately turn tail and try to fly back to the party, when suddenly the broom loses its power and they both crash in the muck. They hear the door to the hut open, so Pike grabs the broom and Scanlan grabs Pike and they both dimension door back to the others, where Pike returns the broom to Vex. Vex takes the broom in her hands, says the magic word, and it works. It's fine. Nothing bad happened. Vex is very much relieved, but not as relieved as Travis. As they approach the swamp surrounding the Echo Tree, Pike's astral form disappears because of reasons. They spot some trolls and decide to avoid them and take an alternate route. Vex, Vax, and Keyleth in eagle form with Scanlan on her back fly there, while Grog gets polymorphed by Keyleth into a gorilla and Percy drinks a potion of climbing. And the two of them follow the flyers by climbing up the trees and using parkour to make their way across the canopy, all the way to the center of the Shade Murk, where the Echo Tree is located. There, they decide to retire to the magnificent mansion to get one last long rest before entering the Echo Tree. Before calling it a night, Keyleth communes with nature and gleans a few more details about what happened to the land, including that the Archfey that corrupted it is named Saundor. In the cartoon, they learned this from Garmeli.
The Shade Mark is home to a cursed archfey named Saundor.
In the morning, after breakfast, they leave the mansion and head towards the Echo Tree. Using Speak with Plants, Keyleth proclaims that they are there to pay tribute to Saundor. The moment that she does, an entrance opens on the trunk of the Echo Tree. They enter, and the moment that they do, that entrance closes. In both versions, Saundor focuses on Vex'ahlia and ignores the others, offering to give her whatever she wants, and all she has to give him in return is her heart, to which she responds with one of the most iconic lines in the franchise.
My heart is someone else's.
And the battle is on. In the cartoon, Vex'ahlia fights Saundor alone, pitting their archery skills against one another, while the rest of the party fight his tree minions. In the campaign, this scene is your traditional combat round, so it's pretty much a free-for-all. In both versions, Keyleth attacks the tree monsters by turning into a fire elemental and then traveling through one of her tree portals from one tree monster to the other. In the cartoon, she successfully destroys both monsters with this ingenious attack. In the campaign, she only manages to kill one of them this way, but it was still really cool. Because Saundor can maneuver himself high above them by using the vine tendrils that are on his back, Grog can't get any hits in, as he doesn't have as many substantial range attacks as the other members of the party. So instead, he summons Ukurat, who joins the fray soon thereafter. The rest of the party then dispatches the second tree monster, and Scanlan attempts to perform a fastball special on Saundor by throwing fire elemental Keyleth at him with Bigby's hand, but sadly misses. Vex'ahlia gets knocked out but quickly revived by the others. And Grog, who has virtually been out of the fight this whole time, randomly throws his javelin of lightning at Saundor and inadvertently deals the killing blow. So for those of you keeping score at home, that's 3 major villains that Grog kills in the campaign. Yeah, he was truly the MVP of this length of the game. In the cartoon, it is Vex'ahlia who defeats Saundor, using the very siege arrow that Percy made for her. Both versions are cool, but the cartoon services the narrative a lot better. Plus, it was really cool to see Vex'ahlia get her moment, especially with her dying at the beginning of the season. At this point in the campaign, Ukurat takes his leave and lets them know that they are even. And Vex'ahlia starts second-guessing her decision to fight Saundor instead of accepting his offer. Percy and Keyleth reassure her that she made the right choice, and that Saundor was terrible. Keyleth then tells her that she shouldn't let a man tell her that she needs him to be great. Then the two of them hilariously take turns making fun of Saundor, which effectively cheers up Vex'ahlia. Scanlan then formally presents our favorite ranger with her vestige, the Fenris bow. In the cartoon, she has no doubts about her actions, and needs no one to present her with her weapon. She just takes it, like a boss. They then leave the Echo Tree and run into Garmeli, who thanks them for all the entertainment they have provided him for the past few days by creating a portal for them to get back home. Too traumatized to question anything, our heroes take their leave, and it is after they are gone that Garmeli reveals that he was actually Artagan the Traveler all along. Yeah, the Traveler! Let chaos reign! Sorry. In the campaign, they never see Garmeli again. When they leave the tree, he's already in his true form of Artagan. He receives them with a slow clap and thanks them for all the entertainment, as he tends to get oh so very bored. Things immediately get really tense as our heroes don't know who the hell this is. He immediately lets them know that he was Garmeli, but they can call him Artagan. He returns the raven feather that they gifted him and then disappears. And thus, our heroes link hands and prepare to plane shift. And coincidentally, just like the end of the Briarwood arc, this final corresponding episode of the campaign ends with Vax and Keyleth awkwardly referencing the romantic subplot, making the rest of the party feel very uncomfortable. Until Vox Machina vanishes, leaving the Feywild and continuing their quest to defeat the Chroma Conclave. And that concludes this session of Cartoon versus Campaign. I will close this out with an awesome speech from an awesome show. Destiny. She can surprise you, lift you up, highlight your strength. Or she can ruin your confidence, reveal your faults, make you question your purpose. Destiny is a bit of an asshole, really. But some of us, a lucky few, can seize control of destiny, bend it towards good, the fair, the just, to those like the kind Keyleth, the virtuous Pike, the spirited Scanlan, the courageous Vasselheim, the loyal Grog, the clever Percival, and the brave Exalia. So to honor their sacrifice, dedication, and goddamn stubbornness, raise a glass to Vox Machina. Thank you for watching, and don't fret, it's almost Thursday.